So Natalie, we've got our iOS and Android app. So for people who want to just shoot things on their mobile, possibly a lapel mic or even just a microphone from a mobile, you can do that. And that's very cheap and obviously very easy to do.
Yep.
Videos automatically upload from our app up into the Vidversity platform. But some people want to do a little bit more. They want a little bit more lighting, microphones, and maybe set up a mini studio. And so over the last couple of days, or just even today, we've really just gone out and done that. So it'd be great to just get some of your thoughts on the equipment that you need to just go up to that next level if you want to do that.
Sure. So the first thing is the camera. So obviously the camera is the key to all of it. And it entirely does depend on budget. So I'll tell you the kit that we built with all of the stuff that I've got, which is the camera, the tripods, the backdrop, everything was about $2,000. So the budget can vary, of course. The camera, there is really two options for a camera. You can get your traditional DSLR, and a DSLR camera is what you traditionally think of as someone taking photos. They've become really popular for video, but the problem with them is they tend to heat up and after about 30 minutes shut down. So if you want...
And the file sizes can be quite big.
Yeah, they can be enormous and really hard to move around, so that can be a...
And do the files come out as MP4 in DSLR?
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
That's not usually a feature of them.
Right.
So then you have your sort of handy cams, your camcorders that we're used to for video, and they are probably preferable for a number of reasons. One is the continuous recording, one is the size of the output, so you can often output it in MP4, and just so for people who've not really worked with video, MP4 is it's a much smaller file, and why is that important? Because it's often really hard to get a file from your camera onto a computer and do anything. If it's too large, you really need specialised equipment, so MP4 is really good. And also, cameras have really come a long way. So $1,000 gets you a pretty amazing camera these days. Now I've chosen, I have no alignment to any brand, but I chose a Sony camcorder. A couple of things that I really needed and were deal breakers for me were the ability to put an external mic in. I wanted a viewfinder, so that's something that you can actually look in to see where the video is filming rather than just a screen, because sometimes a screen can have a glare issue. I needed to be able to, I personally like to have manual settings, so if I'm not happy with the focus or that, I can take over. And I needed something that was just a little bit more than what you'd film your children on an afternoon. So but I think for me, the key thing is I need an external mic. Without a microphone, it's impossible. In fact, that's really the most important part of videoing is sound and lighting, really.
Yeah, all right. And so we just talked about the external mic. So there's the camera. We talked about the external mic. What did you go for and why on the external mic?
There's a number of mics you can get. You could get lapel mics. The wire ones are good, they're cheaper, but they're really cumbersome having wire all around you. So then there's the wireless ones, and they're getting up to $500, $700. So that for me was a little too much. So I've gone for, now excitingly, the best brand for microphones is Rode, and they're an Australian brand, which is great. So I've gone for a sort of on-camera, what they call a shotgun mic, which sits on top of the camera and is directional, so it's just straight to you and I.
We've been really happy with the sound coming out of that.
I think it's amazing. I mean, we're in an office that doesn't have any sound protection. It's not a studio. There is ambient noise around, and it's doing a really good job.
That's good. And then, of course, we need lighting. I mean, we talked about sound. Lighting's important as well. Probably, we would say that sound is probably a little bit more important than lighting. But if you want both, we're talking about a studio setup now. So tell me a little bit about what we've...
Well, lighting is the one that's the most deceptive because it's expensive and it's quite hard to do and it takes a lot. So we're in this shoot, we're using one LED light with 500 plus lights in it, which costs around $600, and it's still Probably, we're not at our optimum here for lighting. You'd probably want one or two, but probably another one. But lighting is something you can't get a cheap, good version. So you're better off buying one great one and saving up for another great one than having a series of small ones that aren't so fantastic. So lighting is really, and it's probably the hardest part of videoing. It's the thing that needs a little bit more practice and skill.
Well, and I think that's probably why you quite often see videos, particularly on YouTube and so on, where the lighting isn't very good because it's hard to do. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it if we are talking about a studio setup. But probably the main thing, if you can see the person, the thing that really gets people down is if the sound's really poor.
You have to be able to hear
that's number one, really, isn't it? If there's a choice, if you had to, great, you have both. That's what we're going for with this, budget studio setup. But the sound is really important. That's why we've spent a bit of money on the directional mic.
Yeah, and that microphone was just over $200, so it's a bit of money, but it's well worth it.
That one's worth it.
It's really, really worth it. And these things should last you quite a few years and really handle a lot of wear and tear. So it's one of those things you get what you pay for. So it's worth investing in.
All right, and the camera that we're looking at up here has to sit on something.
Yeah, tripod. Tripods are yuck. You have to get a good tripod, and the thing that in relation to tripods, when I say they're yuck, they're quite complex to use. They look like they'd be really simple. The thing to be mindful of when you're buying a tripod is make sure you're buying a tripod that's suitable for videoing, not just static type images, because you need to be able to tilt, and you need to be able to tilt sideways and pan around.
And smooth panning.
Smooth panning can really make your video a lot more engaging.
Yep. And we're in an office here, so normally behind us we would have pictures or books or what have you. We've just had a bit of a play around with a different backdrop. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, you spend about $200 on a frame, and then you can put whatever backdrop. We've gone for white, which is quite bland. You can go for any sort of colour that you want. And also a really new way a lot of people doing this is buying this kind of thing and putting something like butcher paper behind. Paper can be really interesting because it gives a bit of depth and crisp, and you can light it up really easily.
You can also put logos and on the back quite cheaply these days. You can just get the whole lot of logos printed up or some other backdrop like that with paper.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And one of the things is background is really important. And this office that we're sitting in is not that interesting, so we didn't really want the background to be the office. So it's a quick way to just sort of get rid of that. So yeah. So basically you need a good camera. You definitely need to invest in sound, ideally invest in lighting. If you haven't got the budget for lighting, I would wait until you do, rather than buy a few smaller ones. Wait until you can get something that's substantial in size.
We had a little bit of a go with some smaller, cheaper LED lights, and it just probably didn't make that much difference to it.
No, and it actually was worse. It created a lot more shadowing, and it was worse than having a light at all.
A small one might work where it's really dark, and you're happy to get some light, but in this setting we needed something more.
Yeah, with the fluoro lights we needed something a little bit more powerful. We needed lights with something called barn doors, which are these you'd see in a movie set, which has got the sides and the flaps, so you can actually direct the light to where you want it to go.
All right. Any other tips? I mean, this is the thing about this also is that you're planning to move around with all this kit, so it's all it can be bagged up and it's quite transportable.
Yeah, so we're currently in Melbourne, and I'm heading off to Sydney next week to do some interviews. So the two things I want to really stress upon you, I went out and bought all this today, and it's now 2:00 in the afternoon, and we're actually up and running. So that's the first thing. It's not that intimidating. It's not that overwhelming. It's something that once you've invested, it's really easy to set up, and it's very, very portable. I've chosen portable. If you've got a dedicated space, you could probably get something a bit more sophisticated that can stay there. But I need to travel. I'm going on the road to interview people, so I needed something that moves with me. And the only thing really that I can't check in underneath is the light, and that's in a bag like this. So that can come with me. All the tripods and everything, and of course the camera will be with me. But all the tripods, the backgrounds, all of that, I can just check in luggage, and it all weighs, I would say, probably 8 kilos, the whole kit. makes
Yeah.
10 kilos. So it's something that, for me, that was a priority. If that's not a priority, that's fine, but it's good to know that it is very portable.
And if you're not travelling, the other really important thing about this is that this is very, very quick to set up. Like we did it in a matter of minutes, really, once putting everything together. And if you're not travelling around, then you can easily pack it away in a corner or a cupboard as well. So it's quite, you can have your studio out in no time and then pack it up pretty quickly as well. So
yeah, because this office is really small. We couldn't just have this sitting here all the time. So it has to all be packed away.
yeah. All right, any other tips or thoughts?
No, just really get going and enjoy it, and don't be intimidated by it. It's something that can be quickly done and easily done, and is a really great way to deliver learning.
What are you going to be talking about in the next chapter?
In the next chapter, I'm going to be talking about what you do next. So once you've got your video, how can you make it into something a little bit more engaging and actually make it a really exciting, not only just exciting, but a useful learning tool rather than just a passive video.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Natalie. Thanks for watching, and
Thanks
we'll see
a
you in
lot.
the next chapter.
Thank you. God, I hope that was on.